You're listening to Accounted For, the Canadian podcast that explores the intangibles of every career. I'm your host, Daniel Lee. Hey folks, as previously promised, here is an iTunes review from a listener that I will read out regarding the Anonymous Cast series. Really loving the insight you get into careers with this series. It's the type of thing you can't learn from a book, but only from speaking to people candidly who have experience in the industry. Great content. Okay, well, thank you to Delightful Mornings for leaving such an awesome review, and I will keep this in mind to produce more anonymous podcasts in the future. So let this be known to you, other listeners, that if you leave a review and say something or suggest something, I will keep it in mind. It's a great way to communicate with me and also let me know about what you want and also who you are as well sometimes. So thank you for doing that. The podcast itself is brought to you by OMD Ventures, my platform focused on human capital investing. Check out weekly articles on redefining the status quo in work and life, as well as my daily learnings on becoming healthy, wealthy, and wise. Check it all out at oldmandan.com and remember to subscribe to join the community. And also please help the podcast as well as your fellow friends that you love by telling that one friend this week about Accounted For. Give that person some perspective in their own life and their search for something meaningful and fulfilling that they want to do. Today's podcast is with Marsha Druker, the founder of Fuckup Nights Toronto. Fuckup Nights is an international movement that started in Mexico City by 5 entrepreneurs who got together to share their fuck up, and in 5 years it has just spread throughout the globe. Marsha started her career in the world of corporate marketing. As the atypical high achiever, she didn't think twice about joining the corporate world until she really began to wonder if there could be something else out there. In our chat, she takes us on a ride to her move to Tel Aviv in Israel to join the hot startup community there, and how that experience led to Fuckup Nights Toronto. We go through the non-linear journey Marsha took to run a community business, as well as her own fuck-up en route to where she is now, and what it's really like as someone who is focused on getting other people to share their fuck-ups live in front of an audience. This was really a fascinating conversation for me, especially also because I am always curious about how these kind of community-based companies form, because it's just been, I would say, very impactful in the Toronto startup community to see her event just become so popular and even hear people talk about it in coffee shops. And I personally had the pleasure of attending my first Fuckup Nights event right after interviewing Marsha for the podcast, and it really was a lot of fun where I got to hear some amazing stories, and I would recommend to you, my audience, to really check it out if you would love to hear some great stories of people who've essentially fucked up and learned from that and how they were able to bounce back. Maybe it can inspire you to pursue something that scares you, or even to let you know that it's okay to fail, it's okay to fuck up, and there's nothing wrong with it. And so, yeah, without further ado, here is my interview with Marsha. Hi everyone, welcome back to Accounted For. Today on the podcast, I have Marsha Druker, the founder of Fuckup Nights Toronto. Hi Marsha, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
And for the guests who may not be familiar with Fuckup Nights Toronto and who might maybe mistake it with, some kind of mistake you make on a Friday night, what is Fuckup Nights Toronto? Can you explain it to the audience, and how big is it? Can you tell us more about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So we definitely do have a really fun and edgy name, but Fuckup Nights is a speaker series and community that shares stories of professional failure. So we have monthly events where we bring out 3 speakers and they really share their biggest fuck-ups and the lessons that they've learned. Fuck-up nights happen in over 300 different cities all over the world. In Toronto, it's been here since March of 2017. And our whole purpose is really to change the conversation around failure, to make it something that's, fun and accessible to talk about, and something that we can all learn from. Failure really touches every person in every industry. So let's talk about it in a fun environment where there's no judgment, and it's something that we can all learn from.
Got it. And Fuck Up Nights, it rotates around different venues, right? It's not like there's one area that only does Fuck Up Night events. How does it work?
Yeah, it really varies in different cities across the globe. Here in Toronto, we've done regular monthly events at the same venue, and then we rotate for industry-themed events and special events.
Gotcha. And from our first conversation, you told me how Fuck Up Nights actually originated down in Mexico City with what was it, 5 different entrepreneurs who just got together and started sharing their failures, and it just spread out of there.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. So there was one entrepreneur who, she was sitting down looking at her financial statements, some spreadsheets, and a lot of it was kind of in the red. And she realized that her social enterprise had failed. And that night she got together with a few of her friends who were also entrepreneurs, and they were having some mezcal drinks, which is a really popular beverage in the region. And they just got to talking about some of their biggest failures. And walking away from that conversation, they felt like it was the most honest business conversation that they've ever had. So from there, they decided to do it with a bigger group of friends. And it just kind of snowballed from there. It started becoming an event in Mexico City. Mexico City is a place that draws a lot of travelers and, international people. So people from other cities started seeing it and becoming really fascinated with it. And that's how it's grown to over 300 cities now. So it started in 2012 and it's just exploded ever since. It's one of the largest, if not the largest movement in the world like this.
Wow. And yeah, this might not really relate to it, but I remember I met a colleague who was working in Mexico City back when I was in consulting, and she was telling me how people in Mexico City are close to like workaholics. Like they work really hard, and I was very surprised because I was thinking, oh, Mexico, I think about nice beaches and it should be very relaxing. But she was telling me, no, like people in Mexico they really work really hard, and so I can only imagine that they probably also go through a lot of failures and have a lot of that like pent up stuff that they need to like talk about.
Absolutely. So I was actually just traveling through there just around a month ago, and I've been to Mexico before, I had that resort experience, but this time I spent some time really getting to know the region. I spent a few days in Mexico City. I did a few day trips. And yeah, it's exactly like you said, people really hustle there. Like people work and play hard, and especially in Mexico City. And with that, there's a lot of entrepreneurship, a lot of creativity. And with that, obviously, there's a lot of failure. But they have a really great attitude about it, and they're very open to sharing their failures. So it's really a no-brainer why something like Fuck Up Nights was born there.
Yeah. And you are the founder and kind of one of the pioneers of this movement of talking about failure openly, something that is a subject that I think a lot of people do shy away from. Is that something that, I'm just curious, was part of your kind of childhood growing up? Like were you taught to like embrace failure early on? Like how did you handle it? Was it like a big part of it?
You know what? It's really funny, actually. My mom and I were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and she could actually pinpoint the exact time that I encountered my first failure. So I was performing in a school concert. I was maybe like 5 or 6 years old, and I had 2 parts in this concert. So the first part, I had to recite a poem, and then later on, I had an act that I think was like a song or a dance with another group of students. And while I was doing that first part by myself, the poem, I kind of stumbled and I forgot a word, and, somebody helped me out, and then I continued with it, and everything was great. Everything was fine. But when it came time for me to go backstage and, change into my costume for the second part of the concert, I was really upset, and, my mom had to come and comfort me. And I honestly thought in that moment that that's it. I ruined the whole thing, that, that one little failure, that one little stumble, it's going to end the whole thing. And really, that was the first time that I learned about failure. And, my mom really taught me that lesson that, hey, it's okay. It happens to everyone. And just pick yourself back up and go finish like this concert really strong. So I think that was the first time that I've encountered it. But throughout my, childhood and growing up, I'm really the type of person that's a perfectionist. I went to Schulich. I've always had really high grades. I've always been a very high achiever. So failure is something that's, it doesn't come naturally to me, like talking about it and embracing it. So through something like Fuck Up Nights, I've been really able to learn about failure myself. And running something like this, obviously I've had so many of my own failures in launching it and growing it to what it is today. So over time, I think that my perception of failure has really changed, and I think I have a much healthier attitude towards it now as well.
Gotcha. And Druker, your last name? What's the heritage of that? Like, where's that come from?
Yeah. So my background is I'm from Ukraine. That's where I was born there. I lived there until I was 8 years old. I'm also Jewish, but the background of my last name, I believe, is actually German. So I have some German roots as well.
Yeah. Wow. So you weren't born and raised in Toronto then?
I wasn't. No, I'm an immigrant.
Nice. And kind of coming in when that's a fun time to come to a different country when you're 8. Like I came to Canada when I was 10, and then as you came to this new country, like what kind of dreams did you have of becoming, like when you're growing up? Like what kind of dream career or job did you think about when, like I find like the age between 7 to 13 is when you have like these kind of unadulterated, just like fresh, very like maybe naive, but even clean, just
totally.
possible dreams.
So I think growing up, like I've always been really creative and really into like art, and really just like anything that's creative would really draw me to it. So I kind of saw myself in advertising actually, but then I really started to develop a passion for business. Like early on in high school, I knew that I wanted to go to business school. I knew specifically that I wanted to go to Schulich. So that was kind of the path that I took. But over time, I've really become even more passionate about entrepreneurship and tech. And, now I found myself doing this. Like never in a million years would I see myself leading something called Fuckup Nights. Like if somebody showed me a crystal ball and I was able to see this, I don't think I would believe it, but I'm super passionate about it now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, you kind of went down, I guess, that potential route of advertising when you first started. I guess when you went to Schulich for business, you still study marketing. And then so you were, when I look at your LinkedIn profile, you're a corporate marketer, I'd say, for, I guess, about 3 years. You were at, I'm going to butcher his name, like Jarden and Micron or Mercon?
Yeah, close enough.
Yeah.
So with Schulich, especially at the time that I graduated, really like you were either pushed into accounting, finance, or if you chose to go down the marketing route, a really clear path was going into a consumer packaged goods company, which is what I did. I went to Jarden, which is now acquired by Newell Brands. And I had that really traditional, marketing CPG role where I worked on 6 different brands and in a really like analytical sort of marketing capacity. I did a lot of project and product management over there. And from there, I was gravitating more towards the marketing communication side of things, and I was becoming really interested in PR. So that's how I found my next role at Mircom. So that's a life safety company, and I headed up communications there. So I did an internal and external.
How does that relate, like marketing and PR? Do they work together often in most organizations? And how does the kind of role disseminate between those two?
Yeah, really great question. A lot of the time, PR sits under marketing in a company, but really depending on the size and the budget, a lot of companies will actually, outsource their PR and work with an agency. Some kind of do a combination of both. They have an internal PR person, and then that person interfaces and manages an agency as well.
Gotcha. And PR, when I think about PR, I think the first person I ever met in PR was a person who's actually working on a Volkswagen account when Volkswagen got their diesel scandal, and they're saying, we're just trying to manage that. We're trying to make it so the company doesn't look that bad. And that was my first impression. Also, that's what PR is. It's like disaster relief and things like that.
That's definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I mean, crisis management. But I think PR, the way that I would define it, is really telling a story and really like shaping public perception of your company. Really like positioning the founder and the company in the eyes of the public, how you would want it to be perceived, and finding those opportunities to share that story. But of course, negative things could happen, and it's all about how you handle it and how you sort of shape that story as well.
Mm-hmm. And so through that, you first got into marketing, you followed that CPG route that they said you have as the option in university, and then you figured out that, okay, no, I think the PR side, communications is more what I want to do. And then you went to Tel Aviv. You went to join a startup called Veed, and you became like the 6th employee there. How does that happen? First of all, why Tel Aviv? What made you want to go to Israel?
Yeah, so I think like you can already tell through this podcast, I've had a very non-traditional, non-linear path to get to where I am now. So yeah, I was in this great corporate role for about 3 years doing communications and PR. And I really loved it. I loved the company. I loved my team. But I felt like I was kind of stagnating at a certain point. I didn't really feel like I was learning as much as I could. And I was just sort of ready for a change. And at that same time, I was becoming really passionate about tech and, the startup scene here in Toronto, but more so globally and in other places all over the world. And something that I've kind of regretted during university was not going on exchange. A lot of my friends had gone and, it was the best time of their life and, you learn so much while you're on there. So I decided to find an opportunity that would let me combine both. So an opportunity to jump into a different industry, to work for a startup, and to have that opportunity to live abroad and to travel. So I happened to come across this opportunity in Tel Aviv called Career Israel, where they basically match you with a company in whatever industry you're interested in. For me, it was tech and startups. And Tel Aviv and Israel is like absolutely known for that. It's, people call it Startup Nation for a reason. They have the highest number of startups per capita. They're like just behind Silicon Valley. Some really huge names coming out of there, like, Wix is headquartered there, Fiverr, Waze was started there and then acquired by Google, and there's just like countless incredible startups there. And, I figured since I'm taking this risk and I'm leaving the safe corporate job behind, why don't I really like go full in and go for a smaller startup where I can really make the biggest impact? So I came on board with this company called VeedMe. They're in the video marketing space. So they would, basically it's a platform that would connect videographers with marketers who were looking for, to create video content. And it was a platform that would let them sort of interface the whole process, see priced examples, and then use the platform to secure everything. And then that company was actually later acquired by Fiverr a couple of years later. So that was really exciting to have been part of a startup that was part of an acquisition later on. But while I was there was 6 of us, and my role was really focused on content marketing, PR, communications. But since there were only 6 people and it was a startup environment, I really got to wear a lot of different hats and to learn from all aspects of the company. So I got to have a say in product. Whenever we would tweak something or change something, I would be testing it along with the team. I tried my hand at business development and sales. And really, like, I was exposed to a whole different world of marketing, which I wanted to learn about. Coming from a more traditional marketing corporate path, I was doing a lot of traditional, like advertising, brand building, working with agencies, those types of marketing activities. With this, in a startup, you have to be a lot more scrappy, and it was really like growth marketing, content, and social, and really like tracking everything that we were doing. It was a whole different world for me, but it was so exciting.
And so the contrasting that with the traditional marketing world and the startup marketing world, the brand building and stuff, like, is it like, why is it different? Is it just like the metrics are different, or is it just how you think about marketing in general that's different?
I would say all of the above. I mean, the way that you think about it is a lot more scrappy. In a smaller startup, you don't have the type of budget that you would have in a corporation. So you really have to look at unique ways to get your message out, to really be able to track results. A lot of it is really like heavily focused on content. So a lot of my role was, creating blog posts and webinars and really fun like social content that could be shared, and everything that could be like very easily tracked. Case studies was another really big thing, and since it was a video marketing company, a lot of video content as well.
But even before all this, the move to Tel Aviv, stopping the tracks of a 3-year corporate marketing role and telling your friends and family, hey, you know what, I'm just gonna go to Tel Aviv, join this small company in what you previously phrased as like close like an internship opportunity, and say like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this. How did your nearby circle take it, like your colleagues, your family, your friends? Like what was their reaction?
Honestly, I think a lot of people thought I was completely insane for doing it. This program was an internship. So the program that I went on, it was 4.5 months. It was like an unpaid internship. I was paying to be on the program. But there was some grants involved, and your housing and everything was covered. So for me, the way that I rationalized it to myself is that this was going to be like my MBA. I didn't really want to do continuing education. I didn't want to do a formal MBA. And for me, I thought that this was the best way to sort of take the next step in my career, to get that startup experience that I was looking for, to learn a new aspect of marketing, and to really like get myself completely out of my comfort zone and to go live in a different country where I didn't know anyone, I didn't know the language. And I think it was the best thing that I could have ever done. But at the time, like trying to rationalize it to people, most people weren't super understanding, and they were kind of concerned about like, why are you doing this? But I think the people that were really close to me, my very close friends and my family, they were understanding, and they were really supportive, even though maybe they didn't believe in it 100%, but they were supportive of my decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I love how you put it that way, where you thought of it as creating your own MBA, where you actually had a purpose of, this is what I want to learn, and if I were to go, I can go to school for let's say a year or two and do this, but I could just do it right now. I could just go to Tel Aviv and I could just learn all these skills related to business and experience it that way, experience a different country.
Exactly, and it cost like a fraction of what an MBA would cost, and I think I learned so much more. And then coming off of that program, I was able to extend my stay. Then I did come on as an employee of the company, so it was no longer an internship and it was no longer unpaid. And then when I came back to Toronto, I did find another opportunity where I made a really significant salary jump. So it definitely paid for itself and was well worth it. But looking back on it, it was definitely a huge risk, and it could have gone either way. But I think when I look at those types of decisions, like I would have regretted a lot more not going and not taking that chance. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like what Jeff Bezos calls it his regret minimization framework. And I think a lot of people have something like that too, where you just ask yourself, would I regret it on my deathbed if I didn't do this? Would I wonder? Like, yeah, I probably would. Then kind of the answer is just to say, okay, let's just do it. When I hear about companies that, or not even just me, but when I have conversations with friends and they go like, oh yeah, that company got acquired and this guy was like employee number 10 in it, I bet you he's like a millionaire. When Veed got acquired, did it have any like major like financial impact on you? Did your friends come to you and say, yes, I heard Fiverr bought Veed, are you gonna retire now? Like, did you have that kind of
yeah, like people kind of assumed because I was part of it, but I was actually already no longer part of the company. I was back in Toronto working somewhere else when that acquisition happened. But I was just super excited to for like all the founders and everybody who was part of the company during that point of the acquisition. It was like I was so excited for them, and just to have been able to have been part of it when it was so early on as well, and being able to shape some of their strategy.
And what made you want to come back to Toronto? Like, why not stay in Tel Aviv longer? Why not help Veed build it out for the company further? Like, you were a full-time employee now.
Yeah, so I was technically on a contract, and we had a set date that it was going to end. Around that same time, I had to come back to Toronto actually for a friend's wedding. But at the same time, like I was looking for other opportunities in Tel Aviv, and there's a lot of them, especially as a native English speaker in marketing. Like companies will definitely fight over you. So I had a lot of really interesting opportunities there. I was also in a relationship over there. And there were just like a whole lot of factors where I was seriously considering staying there. But ultimately what ended up kind of changing my mind is that I went back to Ukraine one weekend just to visit some family there. And it was just a reminder of, where I'm from originally, what my parents like sacrificed to actually immigrate to Canada. And in a way, I felt like while I was living in Tel Aviv, while I was living abroad, I was sort of living in a bubble, I guess. Like when I first came on that program, everything was arranged. Like I already had the job lined up. I knew where I was going to live. Afterwards, when I stayed, like same thing, I was living on my own. I found my own place, but I still felt like I was kind of like part of that bubble. And, I was just having this experience. It's a very different process to actually immigrate there and to build a life for yourself. And ultimately, my family and my close friends are here in Toronto, and I just felt like at that time I would have more opportunity here. But it was a very, very difficult decision, and I flip-flopped back on it a few times when I came back. Like, it was not an easy transition, but ultimately I'm really happy with my decision to come back. And it's not like the door is closed to Tel Aviv. You never know, down the line maybe I'll return. But for now, Toronto was definitely the right place for me. And Fuckup Nights, actually, it came about through my experience in Tel Aviv. So it happens in over 300 cities, and Tel Aviv was already one of them. So I went out to one of the events there, completely fell in love with that concept. And then I came back to Toronto, and it wasn't here yet. So I took it upon myself to launch it here.
And that transition, though, to move away from that life in Tel Aviv, like in this vibrant city, and like that is, as you said, one of the big tech hubs and ecosystems there, and ultimately kind of coming down to a decision to say that, like, my family and loved ones are here in Toronto and I'm going to come back. How did that make you feel, though, like kind of hitting that realization, and seeing this kind of dispersion between families in Toronto but this like ecosystem in Tel Aviv exists here?
I mean, it was definitely tough, but at the same time, like, I was so excited about all the opportunity in Toronto. I mean, our tech ecosystem is blowing up, and I think it's becoming one of the best in the world as well. So even though, it's maybe more established than Tel Aviv, I was really excited to come back here and to be able to be part of a startup here as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's also the kind of the startup mentality. You want to be part of the thing that's going to grow when it's young and in the infancy.
Yeah, absolutely. But I definitely, I came back and it was like late fall and then getting into winter, and I definitely missed the weather and the vibrancy of the lifestyle over there. It was a tough transition. The first few months were not easy, but over time, I mean, I got back into the rhythm of things, and I've been really happy.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned how Toronto did not have a Fuckup Nights, but I remember you told me that we already had one in Ottawa, we had one in Montreal, we had one in Vancouver. Why do you think that Toronto didn't have one? Like, no one just thought about starting it? Like, we have a pretty big ecosystem.
Yeah, it's like it was actually incredible timing. So there was a company that was going to launch it, and they had the license to launch it, and they were just kind of sitting on it for a while. They were making the decision if it was the right fit for their brand, and ultimately they decided not to do it. So I was just incredibly lucky with that timing that I found out about it during that point. And, when I inquired about it, it was still kind of in that process. That company was deciding if they were going to do it or not. And, I followed up multiple times and had multiple conversations. And eventually I ended up getting a license and was able to launch it.
Wow. Talk about bigger bureaucratic companies taking longer, and, the benefit of startups being, you're nimble and you can kind of act and decide things faster, and you have less things relying on, does this work with our brand or whatever?
Exactly. It was just me, and really my mentality with it was, I just want to do this. I think Toronto needs this. I don't think we have the healthiest attitude towards failure. I think people are very afraid of it. I think it's changing especially over the last 2 years with Fuckup Nights here. And myself, I've never actually organized events. I've never done community building. Nothing remotely like it. But I kind of figured, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? I'm going to fuck up something called Fuckup Nights, and then I'll share the story myself. But luckily it didn't. The first event went really well. It really resonated, and it took off ever since.
And what were the factors that kind of pushed you to say that I'm the person that needs to bring this to Toronto?
You know what? It's actually I think when I share my story, I kind of end up sharing the highlight reel myself. That, I saw this in Tel Aviv, and, I really wanted it to exist in Toronto, and I did it, and it's been so amazing. But the truth is, when I started it, I was I was in a really weird place in my life. I kind of felt like I was a big failure. I had made this decision to go abroad, and then I came back. I was having trouble finding a job because it was the holiday season. Things were really slow. And just like I really wanted this community to exist. I felt like that was a place where I can kind of, learn from other people's failures, like see other people who are, looking for their next step or, maybe dealing with some kind of failure. So it just kind of stemmed from that, like from really wanting this like supportive community and something that was different.
Yeah, I think that's actually something that I've been learning more about as I've been interviewing other founders as well. The dark side that people don't tell you about, how lonely the journey is, like whether you're a founder or whether you're just even going to branch out into a different industry or like coming back from a different country and trying to start out again, and the need for like a support group to actually help with coping with that kind of the dark thoughts that pop into your mind.
For sure.
Yeah. And but you got on your feet and you found a role at Acuity, doing marketing, and Fuckup Nights kind of came about while you were at Acuity, right? How did you how did that kind of come out? Like, were you at Acuity and the head office at Mexico City called you and said, all right, you got the license, now you can go, you have our permission? Like, how did it all happen?
Yeah, so I ended up getting the license maybe a month before I started the full-time role, and then I was kind of ramping up to launching it. I really didn't think that Fuckup Nights was going to become this like massive thing that it is today, and I didn't do the best job in balancing it. So one of the fuck-ups that I made with Fuckup Nights is that I didn't really build a team quickly enough. Like, I thought that I could just do it by myself. So I planned the entire launch event like completely by myself, like all the speakers, all the partners, marketing the event, all the logistics around it. It was definitely a ton of work. And then I started building out a volunteer team since that event. But it took a really long time to actually be able to like delegate things and to be able to let go of things. So I was working full time and doing Fuckup Nights for about a year. And I didn't do a good job of balancing the two, and I actually ended up being let go from that role. So that was one of my biggest failures in my career and in my life. But ultimately, I think it was a really positive thing. It pushed me into this journey of entrepreneurship. So since that happened, leading up to it, Fuckup Nights I was able to make it profitable. I had other initiatives on the go as well, and I've always had that sort of entrepreneurial bug. Like, I really wanted to do my own thing, but I had this great role and this great title and this amazing team, and I was really scared to take the risk. And I liked how it sounded. I'm a marketing manager here, and then I also run this amazing community. So that experience kind of made me reflect on it and realize that I don't think I'm going to be happy in another job. Like, Fuckup Nights is really my passion, and entrepreneurship is my passion. So I really just want to be doing my own thing. So since that experience, I actually haven't looked for another full-time position, and I've really been focusing on growing Fuckup Nights and then doing independent work with clients as well.
And during that time when you were trying to balance two things, you have this I guess passion project, this baby of yours that's growing, like that's Fuckup Nights, but going back to you're always someone that got high grades in high school. It was kind of like the type A overachiever, knew what she was gonna do, and to experience that, to phrase like fuck up, of not being able to balance the two, of having a full-time job and running Fuckup Nights and actually being let go. Like, how did it make you feel though when that actually happened to you? Did it actually feel, I think the common thought people might have would be, oh, that probably felt like shit. Or did it?
It did.
Yeah.
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 I mean, I really wouldn't recommend getting let go from a job. I think I could have handled it a lot better. I was at the point where I realized I wasn't doing a good job balancing the two, and, it was probably time to move on. But ultimately that decision was made for me, and I was really in a position where I could have made it myself a lot quicker and saved myself a lot of time and saved this company a lot of time as well. So I mean, I definitely have some regrets, and I would have done it very differently if I could go back. But the thing about that failure is that you can't let it stop you. So I kind of had a choice after that. Like, do I slow down on fuck up nights, and do I look for another role and kind of like forget this community or like pass it off to somebody else? Or do I really like follow this passion and see what I could grow it to? And I really took that second route. So I was able to really like significantly grow it. We had a 1-year anniversary event like shortly after I had that experience where, you know, we had over 500 people and the concert and like 4 incredible speakers. And it's really like exploded ever since. This fall, actually, I launched it in Kitchener-Waterloo as well. There's no way that I would have been able to do all of that if I was still working full time. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise, but I would have handled it a lot differently if I could go back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that it's honestly like what I see is a beautifully classic case of you had a failure, but it just became, if you seize it correctly, it just became an opportunity to just kind of, you know, ride from the ashes and actually be an amazing learning opportunity to like even excel and like, go further. It's like how what you mentioned about how I wonder, do you wonder that about how if Acuity had not let you go and kind of forced you to make a choice of am I going to be an entrepreneur or an employee again, whether you would have fully been able to make the jump of being an entrepreneur?
I don't know. I feel like eventually I think it would have happened, but I think it would have taken a lot longer. So I'm really glad that it happened when it did.
And when you were making the decision to say, you know what, I'm going to pursue this, I'm going to grow out this community, make it my full-time thing, what kind of steps did you go through to come to that decision?
So I really looked at like the thing with Fuck Up Nights, it's not meant to be something that's, you know, like a business or, you know, something where the goal is profit. Really, like the goal is changing the conversation about failure, building a community. So I'm very conscious of that. Like the partners that I bring on, like they all have to be really aligned with our mission. So I've literally said no to like thousands of dollars of just like companies that I didn't think were aligned and that wouldn't add any value to this community and, you know, that weren't the good fit. So it's like there's definitely a balancing act there. But then also finding other opportunities as well. I mean, I don't do Fuck Up Nights full time. I also work with a couple of PR clients. I do some speaker coaching as well. So there's definitely a number of things that I do.
And on that side of like actually balancing that again and finding, you know, other ways of generating income for yourself and like sustaining and being able to still grow and Fuck Up Nights. How did you go about like finding these like PR opportunities for like startups and stuff?
So my network has really exploded ever since I started Fuck Up Nights. I have really incredible like past speakers in my network, the partners that I work with. So the opportunities that come to me now are kind of inbound. I haven't really had to, you know, go out and like try to sell my services. And, you know, it's really a matter of kind of like focusing on 1 or 2 key clients to make sure that I am able to balance it.
And, you know, if we talk about PR and marketing, like, you know, Fuck Up Nights has just grown so quickly in like the years that you've operated. And, you know, I think we're kind of recording on the year mark of your 2-year anniversary of Fuck Up Nights. So congrats on making it this far. And I'm sure there's like many more years to go. And that's something I think the community definitely needs. But like, I remember you told me about like the start of Fuck Up Nights actually happened at a Tech TO event. Can you kind of walk our listeners through like what happened there?
Yeah, Tech TO is one of my favorite events in Toronto. They're actually a community partner with Fuck Up Nights, which is crazy to think because literally 2 years ago I was going out to these events and I was so like shy and nervous to talk to anyone. But the day that I got the license to start Fuck Up Nights, there was actually a Tech TO event happening that night. So literally
talk about coincidence.
Yeah. So all I had set up at that point was a Twitter account. So I just had the like Fuck Up Nights TO Twitter handle. And Tech TO does this thing at the beginning of their events where anybody in the audience can raise their hand and they could do a 10-second pitch to the audience to share whatever they're working on, really like anything. The mic is yours. So that's when I pitched Fuck Up Nights. And, you know, I stood up and I said that, hey, like this is coming, stay tuned. This is when it's happening. We're looking for speakers, partners, team members. And I mean, I was like not a natural public speaker at all. I was so nervous to do that. But ultimately, I think what it did was, I announced that this thing was coming in front of like over 500 people, and they kind of like kicked my own ass into gear to actually like, okay, now I have to make this happen. And a lot of engagement came through that pitch. I also tweeted it from that handle where I had 0 followers at that point, gained a few followers. But we've had some really great like potential speakers, and I think even a partner come from that one initial pitch. So I think that was a really great lesson for me, like being the type of person that's, a perfectionist and, always wants to wait until, it's like the right time and it's the perfect time to launch something. This, like, it literally shifted my mindset where I was like, no, this is Fuckup Nights. It doesn't need to be perfect. So yeah, all I have is this Twitter handle, but I'm just going to tell people about it, that it's coming.
Nice. And yeah, I remember when we first spoke, I told you that I went to a TechTeo event myself, and I saw the open mic thing, and I didn't really know it was in that way. You just put up your hand, and Jason Goldlist just goes around and gives you a mic, and you just talk.
On his hoverboard.
Yeah, and I remember when I went, this was my first event, and I was so afraid. Like I love people, like I love talking to people constantly, meeting strangers on the podcast, but even then I was just in my chair and I was so afraid to just stand up and say it. And I eventually got the courage to at least put my hand up, and I didn't get called on, but even just putting my hand up had me have like butterflies, just crazy, just going in my chest and just thinking, what am I going to say? What are these people going to think if I say it?
Yeah, it's definitely not easy. Like, I remember I was like literally shaking like during and after that pitch, but you just got to do what you got to do. And over time, as you do more of these and you do more public speaking, there's really nowhere to go but up. Like, you're going to improve. There's no way you're going to get worse.
Yeah, exactly. And so now you've committed. You've told everyone, you've told like 500 people, It's coming. What were the steps like to actually getting the first event ready?
The major thing was securing a venue. So when I was first starting with it, I thought that I was going to keep the first event really small and intimate, like just find maybe like a co-working space, have like 30 people out there. And then, I don't know, something just clicked and I was like, I think this could be bigger. So
it just you just had an insight?
Yeah, I thought, what, like this is such a cool name, cool concept. I think I should go for a bigger venue that's like well known. So I ended up approaching the DMZ, and I had the first event there. So that was over 100 people. And let me tell you, as an event organizer, like people would know this, anybody who organizes events, a lot of your ticket sales, if not most of your ticket sales, kind of come like during like the week of the event, sometimes like the day of or the day before. So here I had this room that fits 100 to fill, and like even a week before the event, I think I had like 10 people registered.
Oh, I think I'd have so much anxiety.
Oh, I really did. So I mean, yeah, I was like, this was a huge mistake. This is gonna be a fuck up. But then I'm like, I don't know, I just realized like there's so much that I could do to actually like get the word out about this event. So I went to like any event that would let me pitch. I would make announcements. I found like any relevant Facebook group about, entrepreneurship and like young professionals and so on where I could post it. I messaged people directly. Like I did all kinds of things to be able to sell that event, and that it sold out. Like we had a wait list, people were waiting at the door to get in, but it was not as easy as it looked. Like it was a lot of hustle to actually make that first event sell out.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to imagine like approaching the DMZ and saying, hey, I want to do an event called Fuckup Nights. How did that pitch go?
That was interesting. So it's, DMZ is part of Ryerson. So obviously, there was an approval process that happened, and it did take a while, but they loved it. I mean, they're all about entrepreneurship, and failure is part of entrepreneurship. So yeah, like the name is different and it's edgy, but ultimately they thought it was a great fit.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we went with it, and then once I had that venue secured, it was really about finding speakers. And that was definitely not easy as well. For that first event, no one's heard of it. People aren't really used to sharing their failures, so it was like a very new concept. So the way that I found the speakers, I literally went through my entire LinkedIn just to kind of like get a refresher of who's already in my network. Remembered one person who I thought would be awesome, reached out to him, he loved it. And then I was also working with somebody who helped me co-host the event. So she recommended a speaker as well. And then another speaker came from one of the speakers. And then the fourth one also from one of our networks as well. So it really shaped up like leading up to the event. But yeah, definitely like venue and speakers were the main things. But then it was really a matter of, finding partners, like how are we going to have beer at this event? What does the licensing look like to be able to serve beer in a private venue? That was a whole other thing as well. And then building out a team of volunteers, people who were going to be there on the night of the event to do things like setup and registration and, managing that whole process.
Yeah, how did you find the volunteers for that?
So a lot of them for the very first event were actually like close friends of mine or colleagues that I worked with. There's one person who actually came from a Facebook group from Bun's Entrepreneurial Zone. And he was on the team since day one. And he's an incredible member of the team now. And then over time, the way that the team has grown was really a lot of people who have come to the events. They will approach me afterwards and, they have some ideas for how they want to contribute and be part of it. And those are really the people that stand out to me that, approach me with a concrete idea of what they would actually want to do as part of the team. Wow. So, yeah, the team has really grown ever since.
And I think talking about failure, as you said, it's not easy. And even for me, as I try to get interviewees for the podcast, I had to use my own internal network first, and it's still the process of getting the individual to volunteer their precious time, and also kind of building a sense of trust for them to actually tell me their stories, which I'm so fortunate for. How did you go about creating an environment that was safe, where people could actually feel like they can comfortably share their story?
Yeah, so there's something that we do at each event, and I can't take credit for this. This was my co-host that was helping me out from the beginning. So we have a set of ground rules that we set for the audience, and we really let our audience know that as our community and as our audience for Fuckup Nights, you actually have the most important role in the room. So public speaking by itself is definitely stressful enough as it is already. It's a lot more pressure when you're sharing a failure, maybe multiple failures in a talk. So as these speakers come up to share their stories, please appreciate the courage that it takes to come up here. There's no judgment, and ask curious questions. After each speaker, we have an opportunity to do a Q&A. So here's your chance as the audience to really dig deeper into their story and to really help the speaker kind of deepen their own learning and really extract those lessons for yourself as well. So I think setting those 3 ground rules, it really, you could see it resonates with people. People are nodding along, and they just approach it in a whole different way. And, not each speaker is going to resonate with each person. But I think with a Fuckup Night, even if, one speaker really speaks to you and you take away one lesson, I think it's a successful event, and it could be really life-changing at times for people as well, if they're dealing with their own failure and here's somebody that has gone through it and, you see that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's all that matters. So yeah, I think it's creating that sort of environment with setting the stage for it. Then we do a few different activations at our events. So we have something called the Fuckup Wall, where, people can write down their fuck up anonymously on a Post-it. That's something that people
sick.
See. Yeah, right when they come into the event. So there's just a number of touch points through our events that kind of helps just bring the guard down for people. We do an icebreaker after the second speaker where, you turn to your neighbor and you open up about your own fuck up. At the end of the event, we have an opportunity for people to grab the mic from us, similar to TechTO and other events where, they have an opportunity to go up there and maybe share their own failure or whatever they're working on, really an opportunity to make an announcement to the crowd. And we've seen people make really, really vulnerable announcements and, find really great connections in the audience.
Yeah, I'm always for hard conversations. And I think the trick I found was just finding a I think creating that kind of environment is difficult, where people can actually be vulnerable and trust other people. And I think like what you're doing, what you've been able to create is actually like wonderful, that people can actually stand up and actually be comfortable in like saying these things. And so, as a marketer who is now focused on growing Fuckup Nights, what strategy has been the most effective from your perspective of like getting the name out there, growing Fuckup Nights, having more people like become aware of it?
Yeah, so with the name, Fuckup Nights, having profanity in your name, it actually bans you from doing any sponsored content or, any like sponsored advertising.
Really?
Which is really interesting. That would make things a lot easier if, I could promote and, sponsor the events to a specific audience type. But I can't do it unless I like completely take out the profanity, which goes against what the brand is.
Yeah.
So it's really about finding creative ways to bring that concept to life and to let people know about it. So one of the ways is partnering with other organizations, other events in Toronto, and other companies that are relevant to the target audience that we're trying to reach, which is, young professionals and people that are entrepreneurial, not necessarily entrepreneurs, although a lot of them are, but, people who like have that inkling, who maybe have like a side hustle, they're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur. So finding an organizations to partner with that has that type of audience that we could tap into. So for example, we work with Project Spaces as one of our partners. Their whole community is entrepreneurs and freelancers. So that draws a lot of people to our events. Hosting the events at Shopify, that opens the door to a whole host of entrepreneurial people as well. DMZ, Zero Accounting is one of our major partners as well. So really like tapping into to all of those networks. And then PR is a huge piece of it as well. Coming from that background myself, I've been really fortunate with the PR that I've been able to garner for Fuckup Nights Toronto. So, like at first it was a struggle. Like I think it took around a year to get any coverage or for anybody to really take it seriously. But, once we had that first piece, it really kind of catapulted from there. So it's been covered in things like Beta Kit, Tech Vibes, CBC, the National covered us. Like they came to an event, and
that's big.
It was like all over Canada, and there were reruns of it, and it was a really great 8-minute segment just about Fuckup Nights, which was incredible. And then after that, I had the opportunity to appear on The Social, which has like a huge reach as well, and a lot of opportunities like this, like podcasts that are related to entrepreneurship and like untraditional paths. Really like any opportunity to kind of like get that message out there to the audience that we're looking for. Also, I'm pretty active in the tech community and creative community here in Toronto. So going out to different events, anytime there's an opportunity to make a pitch, I definitely take advantage of it. And then our social has been growing pretty steadily since we started. Instagram is a really great channel for us. And then on a personal level, LinkedIn is probably my go-to social network. I've really been able to build up a following and a personal brand on there around Fuckup Nights, and to really like draw a lot of people from that platform to join the community, whether it's coming out to our events or engaging with our online content.
Mm-hmm. And you talked about how it didn't really start picking up until like a year later, and it makes me wonder. I think every journey has a lot of obstacles that you have to continuously overcome to see something brighter on the other side. Is there one particular like big one that pops to mind as, man, I remember this time when I thought everything was bleak, things were not going to work out, but we were able to overcome it, and it's been like better since. Like, is there a particular moment?
There's been a few of them. One that jumps to mind, so we did this massive event for our 1-year anniversary, and like as a person without really an events background, it was a big undertaking. So we had this massive venue that fits over 500. We had a concert that was booked as part of it. We had 4 like fairly big name speakers as part of this event, and we had all these seats that we needed to fill. So leading up to it, as I told you, a lot of the ticket sales kind of come like in the last minute. So it was looking, like I wasn't sure how it was going to go. And at the same time, Firefest was happening, and you know, all these like tweets and stuff about it, and it was like, wow, like this this could be just as bad. But it all worked out. Like there were so many challenges, but ultimately, like I really hustled, my team hustled, and we put together an incredible event. We've had other things, you know, we launched in Kitchener-Waterloo a couple months ago. For the first time ever in the history of Fuckup Nights in Toronto or Kitchener-Waterloo, we had to postpone an event due to really bad weather. Oof. Like, yeah, there was like an ice storm, all the universities were shut down. So that was definitely a challenge, you know, all the communication around it, and definitely not an easy thing to do. But that's what happens with events. There's, you know, you could plan so much and you could have everything perfectly put in place, but there's so many things that are outside of your control. So it's kind of learning to just embrace it. And, you know, it's become easier over time, but I'm definitely a person that has anxiety, and I think these events really bring it out on me. And like, you know, before each event, I'm definitely super stressed. But when I see it all come together, and, you know, when I'm at the front of the room, I love to just look at the audience and, you know, see people's reactions while, you know, the speakers are sharing their stories. And it just makes everything worth it. Like, you see people like literally tear up at some of the stories, you know, laugh along with the speakers, and, you know, people come up to me afterwards and say, you know, how inspiring they found it, and how they needed to hear the specific lesson at that specific time, and something that the speaker has said resonated with them. And then also for the speakers, a lot of the time it's literally the first time that they're sharing their failure story. And some of the speakers that I have, I mean, all like super inspiring, incredible, successful entrepreneurs and professionals. So being able to like hear their stories on that sort of level, and like to have that shared with my community for the first time ever, it's really it's something that makes me really proud. And for the speakers, it's like a cathartic experience, being able to share that failure and to kind of like finally let go of it.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine that catharsis. As we kind of hit upon the final legs of our interview, you mentioned this earlier in the beginning, but I wanted to kind of touch upon it again. You talked about how never in a million years would you have thought about, you know, that you'd be running an, you know, event called like Fuckup Nights. But if that 20-year-old self, the 20-year-old Marsha, was to like look at you and be like, you know, what, I'm running an event called Fuckup Nights, like that third year in like Schulich, what do you think her emotional reaction would be to what you're doing right now?
I think she would be really shocked, but I don't know. I think I would actually be really proud of myself. I feel like over these last couple of years, I've come so far as a person myself. Like, I'm somebody that's, you know, like naturally more like shy and reserved, and I was like very nervous to do any public speaking and like not good at it at all. Doing something like Fuckup Nights, it's pushed me out of my comfort zone in every single way. It's really like, ironically, it's the most successful thing that I've done is something called Fuckup Nights. But it's really been an incredible learning journey, and just I'm really proud of what I've built.
Mm-hmm. And what kind of advice would you like to give to that 20-year-old Marsha? Or like the advice that you wish you had gotten when you were 20?
I think I would say just go for it. Like, don't overthink it. You know, if there's something that you want to do, just take the risk and go for it. And then I think I would also give myself the advice to kind of balance the hustle with some relaxation and travel. Again, like, I really wish that I did exchange in university. I think I was always like so focused, you know, on my grades and, you know, having that perfect internship and so on. But I think that's like a piece of advice that I keep giving myself now, that, you know, you can't just be working all the time. You really need to find balance in your life.
Yeah, finding that empty space to actually be more creative.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I agree with you. Great. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast and sharing your story with our listeners, and even sharing your fuck ups as well.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah, and so if our listeners want to attend a fuck up night, or they want to be like speakers, how could they get involved? Where would they go to?
Yeah, so our local website for Toronto is fuckupnightsto.ca. The global website is fuckupnights.com. So if you're listening from a different city, check it out. All the events are listed there. And then if you want to connect with me personally, my name is Marsha Druker. Just search me on any social platform and I'll be there.
Great. Thanks a lot for coming to the podcast, Marsha.
My pleasure. Thank you.
So thanks for listening to the podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard, please check out other episodes and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date for the future episodes. Also, I would really appreciate it if you would leave a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, whichever is applicable to you. To see past episodes, you can go to oldmandan.com/podcasts. Also, you can sign up to my weekly newsletter on my blog, oldmandan.com/newsletter. You can stay up to date with future podcast episodes that way, and included in the newsletter are my book reviews I write, my weekly article related to the domain of self-development systems, as well as 7 things I learned throughout the week on being healthy, wealthy, and wise. Finally, special thanks to icons8.com for allowing me to use their music, Tiny People, on the podcast. Great. I will see you all next time. Take care.